Hi, welcome to L-Space Archives. I'm Rob, and today we're talking about a landmark story of tremendous historical and cultural significance in the science fiction genre. The story first appeared here in the premiere issue of Universe Science Fiction magazine in June of 1953. This issue contains the first publication of Theodore Sturgeon's groundbreaking and highly controversial story, The World Well Lost, the first science fiction story to give a sympathetic treatment to the subject of homosexuality. According to an anecdote from Samuel R. Delany, a close friend of Sturgeon's, the first editor Sturgeon submitted the story to not only refused to publish it, but evidently called up all the other editors he knew, begging them not to publish it either. And had it not been for a series of fortunate accidents, this story probably never would have seen the light of day. Those happy accidents began 4 years earlier, when publisher and editor Raymond A. Palmer went to the World Science Fiction Convention in Cincinnati, Ohio, to promote the launch of his new magazine, Otherworld Science Stories. At that convention, Palmer met a super sci-fi fan from Cleveland named Bea Mahaffey. Palmer was so impressed by Mahaffey that he hired her on the spot to be his personal assistant. Shortly afterwards, Palmer suffered an accident and was temporarily paralyzed. In his absence, he promoted Bea Mahaffey to managing editor. Palmer and Mahaffey continued co-editing his magazines, even after his recovery. Most critics agree that the issues edited by Mahaffey had far superior stories in them than those edited by Palmer alone. Due to financial issues, Palmer decided to relaunch Otherworlds as a new magazine. Thus, Universe Science Fiction was born. Now, there's a convoluted story regarding the publication going from Otherworlds to Universe to Super Science Stories, but that's a subject for another time. Regardless of its iteration, all of the Palmer group of magazines were considered third-tier publications, and they were known for publishing the stories that had been rejected by every other magazine. And although the editor for the first 2 issues of Universe is listed as George Bell, that was a collective pseudonym for Raymond A. Palmer and Bea Mahaffey, with most of the actual story selection on those early issues being done by Mahaffey. Attempts to blacklist Sturgeon's story had relied on it landing on the desks of like-minded 1950s male editors whose delicate machismo sensibilities would be offended by the very notion of treating homosexuality with anything other than scorn. They did not take into account that it would land on the desk of Bea Mahaffey, someone who knew a great story when she saw it, and who was new enough to the publishing world that she was either unaware or unconcerned about the possibility of public backlash due to a taboo subject. Someone who, while working on Otherworlds magazine during Palmer's recovery, had gone out of their way to cultivate relationships with people like Isaac Asimov, Robert Bloch, Murray Leinster, and Theodore Sturgeon in an attempt to bring higher quality stories to Palmer's magazines. And so in June of 1953, Universe launched its debut issue with the very first mainstream science fiction story to deal with homosexuality in a way that was both heartwarming and heart-wrenching. The art that accompanies the story is credited to Gredno Hasm, which doesn't seem like a real name, and I haven't been able to find any other reference to an artist by that name. Purely an educated guess on my part, but it seems as though the artist might have had concerns about having his real name associated with this story. Aside from this issue of Universe, the story was later republished in various collections of Sturgeon's work, including E Pluribus Unicorn, Starshine, and A Saucer of Loneliness. So, what's the story actually about? Well, the setup is this, and don't worry, I'll warn you before I get to any real spoilers. The story starts on a far future Earth. Humans have long had interstellar space travel. A long time ago, humans discovered a race called the Durbanu. Their planet was shrouded behind an impenetrable force field. The Durbanu were an isolationist race with highly superior technology, but they refused to have anything to do with humans until they could send a diplomat to Earth to investigate their culture. The Durbanu diplomat was immediately disgusted by what he saw of humans and left. There has been no further contact since, until one day a ship lands, and out steps a Durbanu couple. They look very similar to a human man and woman, except their eyes are a bit of a different shape. The couple is given the nickname the Loverbirds. It's clear from the way that they look at each other that they are passionately in love with each other. And unlike the previous Durbanu representative, they are not disgusted, but rather overjoyed by our human appearance. Over the course of the next 9 days, the so-called Loverbirds became an Earth-wide sensation. But then, Earth receives a message from the Durbanu homeworld, claiming that the couple are fugitives. They demand that Earth return them at once. Now, even though the people of Earth are enamored with this couple, the government sees this as an opportunity to establish relations with the Durbanu and maybe get a hold of some of that sweet technology of theirs. So they arrest the Durbanu Loverbirds and put them aboard a prison ship to deliver them back to their homeworld. The prison ship has a two-man crew. Captain Roots, who likes to brag about his female conquests, and his midshipman, Grunty. Grunty is a big burly guy who got his nickname because he barely ever talks and mostly just grunts his replies to people's questions. The way space travel works in this story is that each faster-than-light jump results in humans being knocked unconscious for a couple of hours. Except for Grunty, he generally recovers after only about 30 minutes, while Captain Roots is usually out for about 2.5 hours. Those 2 hours of alone time are precious to Grunty. He spends that time reading books and generally gets to be alone with his thoughts. So that's the initial setup. From here on, there will be all sorts of spoilage. I'll put up a spoiler warning on the screen in case you want to mute or fast forward until it's clear. With that said, I don't think you can really spoil the ending of this story to a modern audience. People today will be able to see where this is going pretty quickly. Sturgeon drops a lot of clues early on, but for people reading this in 1953, this had to come as a shock to the system. It would have been incredibly easy for them to overlook those clues because it was a subject that was simply never discussed, especially not in a mainstream pulp sci-fi story. But if you want to go in cold, spoilers start now. It turns out that the Durbanu Loverbirds also recover from FTL blackouts quickly. Like everyone else, Grunty is enamored with the alien couple. He begins thinking of this beautiful poem, and to Grunty's surprise, the couple reacts smiling at him. Grunty panics. Are the Durbanu telepathic? Can they read minds? What if they know his secret? Grunty tests them by thinking of a much darker and more sinister poem. The Loverbirds shrink back in fear. Grunty loses it. If anyone finds out what he is, he'll never be allowed to fly again. If Captain Roots discovered the truth, he'd react with violence. Grunty's life would be destroyed. Grunty decides he needs to kill the Loverbirds to protect his secret. He devises a plan to make sure it doesn't look like cold-blooded murder. The Durbanu couple, having read Grunty's thoughts, hastily draw a series of pictures. When Grunty comes to enact his plan, they show him the drawings. The first is a picture of Captain Roots, Grunty, and a woman, fully clothed. The second drawing again shows Roots, Grunty, and the woman, but this time all three of them are naked. Then they show him a third drawing. It's the two Durbanu Loverbirds and another alien who looks almost like a completely different species. Again, all three are clothed. Finally, they show Grunty a fourth picture. The same three aliens, but this time all are naked. Grunty understands. The Durbanu couple are both males. Female Durbanu look completely different. Grunty lets them out of their cell and allows them to escape using the ship's life pod. When Captain Roots comes to, he's furious that Grunty let the prisoners go. Grunty shows him the drawings. Roots goes on a homophobic rant, saying had he known that they were transporting a couple of fairies, he would have killed them himself. Roots becomes convinced that Grunty knew this and let them escape to prevent the captain from inadvertently causing an interplanetary incident by murdering a couple of Durbanu citizens. When they reach Durbanu, they make up a story claiming the couple died during transport. It turns out that's perfectly okay with the Durbanu government, as it saves them the trouble of killing them themselves. You see, the Durbanu are an incredibly homophobic race. The reason their original ambassador was so repulsed by the sight of humans was that our males and females both look like Durbanu males. Roots and Grunty head back to Earth, with the Durbanu still committed to not wanting anything to do with humans. After the next jump, Grunty is again alone with his thoughts, while his captain remains unconscious. It's bittersweet. He's happy for the Durbanu loverbirds. They can be together. They're free. Meanwhile, all Grunty has are these precious bits of time where he can be alone with his thoughts, where he can gaze upon his sleeping captain, the man he loves, but whom he can never tell. Grunty's isolation is palpable and heartbreaking. If you haven't read The World Well Lost, I highly recommend it. Are there a couple of minor plot holes? Yes, but it doesn't matter. Sturgeon is a master of bringing characters to life and creating empathy between the reader and the characters he creates. There was literally no writer in the 50s who was better suited to tell the story, who was better equipped with the talent to create that empathetic bond. So kudos to Theodore Sturgeon and to Bea Mahaffey for bringing us a story that was simultaneously ahead of its time while also being long overdue. That's it for this week. Until next time, thanks for watching.